How are you feeling this morning? Great, yeah. How are we feeling this morning? What day is it? It's Friday. Are we feeling alive? It sounds like half of you are. I could make you all dance, but I'm not sure that would be that popular. Good morning. Hands up who wasn't here last week. Okay. Welcome. I'm Taryn, as it says on the screen. I have been, for the last couple of weeks, working with Factorial to impart some wisdom about some of the core concepts of the sales process. And the new members, you're SDRs, right? Yeah? Cool. Excellent. So we've looked at cold calling and the mindset that's required to be effective in cold calling. And then we have examined creating urgency through the sale, because that's incredibly important to maintain momentum in order that we don't lose sight of what we're trying to accomplish. And the third and final part of these little talks is to bring the dimension of qualification, yeah, or questioning, yeah, understanding our client or our prospective client's situation, their potential motivations to buy from you, the hidden details within that organization that you're trying to uncover. So qualification is often described as the art of asking questions, and that is true, but it's not necessarily its intention. Its intention is to reveal information about your client, about their clients, their customers' company situation, that may even indicate their own personal motivations. And ultimately what we're trying to do is we're trying to establish, principally, is this a good fit for my offering? Are these people going to benefit sufficiently that there's value to be given, a contract to be done, a deal to be arrived at? Yeah? So who knows BANT? Who's heard the expression B-A-N-T, BANT? Budget, authority, need, time frame, yeah? Okay. BANT is an okay way of qualifying, but it's very me-focused. It's, are you good enough to be my client? Do you have the authority to say yes to what I'm asking? Do you have the control of the budget to pay for what I'm selling? Do you articulate the need sufficiently, and can you share with me the time frame? BANT's no good for us. BANT was good 10, 20 years ago. Now we have to be a little bit more strategic. We incorporate aspects and dimensions of BANT, but we make the process about the other person. The reason why it's qualifying them is because we already know about us. We know about Factorial's platform. Well, I hope you do. And we want to discover. So we need to apply these questions slightly differently, and we need to frame this in a way that makes sense, because if we understand why we do something, becoming habitual in the way that we do it makes more sense and it's easier to adopt. If I asked you to do something every day that made no sense to you and you didn't understand it, at some point you're going to start losing faith in the process. But if it's clearly understood why we do something, and that understanding is then also communicated to our customers as a process, it empowers us. Okay, so what does all this mean? Good question. We want to establish the difference between where the customer is today, in their situation as a person, in their job, and as a company as a whole, in context to how your solution may impact and benefit them. So if we can find out where they are today, and hopefully today is not a great place because there are problems that translate to pains, yeah? We don't talk to need anymore, we talk to problem. We talk to pain. Because pain is, if I kick you in the shins and I keep kicking you, you're going to get up and move. You're motivated to do something about the pain, or you're going to kick me back. So what we're looking for is motivation, yeah? What is their motivation to change? Because that is essentially what we're selling. We're selling the promise of something better. In order to say it's better, you have to know where they are in the beginning. Yeah? I can't tell you the promised land is better than the current state if I don't know what your current state is. So our qualification is going to comprise of certain types of questioning, from probing questions, yeah, to validating questions, to process questions. And I might describe this in a linear format because time moves in a linear way, but the application of these questions may entwine and mix, and you'll use them as it becomes obvious to present that question. So don't think that what I describe in sequence is the way to do it. Take on board the questions and apply them when it makes sense to do so. We're limited in what we can go through in this hour, but I'll try and give you the best framework to start with. So, let me ask you a question. When does qualification start in your mind? You just, someone shout it out, please, yeah? Before the call. Good start, yeah. At what point?
As soon as we get the lead.
Excellent, exactly. Qualification is the process of discovery. So we're trying to understand more and more and more about our prospect. So that is the gross aspects, company profile, number of employees. Do they kind of fit? Yeah, they're a kind of good fit for us. We will approach them. Then we have the person, yeah, the right level of authority. Not necessarily authority, but position in the company that will allow them to have visibility of how these problems that we believe we understand may impact them. Now, guys, I know English isn't your first language. If anybody wants me to repeat something, just shout out. Don't hold back. It's fine, or I'll rephrase it if it isn't clear. So, what we're seeking to do is to get that person in front of us, or ideally people, because we're more effective if we have multiple points into the company, to tell us about their current situation. And the reason we use probing questions are opening the conversation. Yeah? That probing question is, tell me about how this works. Can you explain what has to happen in this process? Can you describe? These are the kinds of questions that we're looking for. And I'll share the notes I've got from this with Morgan. I'll share them with you after, and the pick chart that I'm going to refer to. Who knows what an open question is? An open-ended question. Do we like open-ended questions? You don't? How come? If everyone zigs, you say zag? The idea is we want them to talk more than we do. There's actually a ratio between the amount of time we spend speaking and listening in that early qualification, that discovery call. And if we spend around 20 to 30% of the time speaking, framing questions, and the other 70% of the time of listening, there is data correlating to the outcome that you're more likely to get the sale, assuming all things being equal, they're a good fit for your business. So we speak to the problem and the pain, right? So we're trying to uncover that. So we're looking for ways to help the customer explain what's going on. So we ask these open-ended questions. Who knows what an open-ended answer is? Precisely. It also is quite vague sometimes, yeah? So, for example, what's your biggest challenge in your business today? We need more growth. Okay. We need to be more efficient at our HR management. We need to see improvements in our operation management. Those are open-ended answers. They don't actually help us. Now, on face value, they're like, great, we're on the right path, but what that does is just say, what that just says is there's a problem, but it remains as yet undefined. If we can get them to define more clearly the problem the objective, the challenge, we start to build more of a picture of where they are. That's for our benefit. And in their mind, we start to distill the problem that they may or may not be acutely aware of. So how does that translate? So tell me, you want more growth? Great. Can you help me understand what that actually looks like? What does good growth look like? Maybe in percentage terms. Now we're forcing them to be specific. And you could go further. What is the company objective? It's 20, 30% growth year on year. Okay, we have something to work with. Where are you against that? We're at 20%. Now, if the target's at 30 and they're at 20, we've discovered a gap. And gap is exactly what we're trying to uncover. The gap between where they are, where they could be or want to be, and where the future is rosy and allows them to attain their target, to attain their objective, to reach that goal. So there is often a tendency, and I was guilty of this in the early parts of my career, to go into a meeting, discovery call, whatever, Zoom or what have you, and tell me about your problem, and they say, oh, we've got this problem, and it's da-da-da-da-da. And you go, excellent, we can fix that. And you go straight into salesman mode, and you say, yeah, and this is why people work with us, because our software accounts for this, and we can do that, and it's got bells and whistles, and it will make the problem go away. And the problem with doing that is you're actually leapfrogging too many stages of the process, and you're trying to start selling too early. The selling part happens much further, much further. The more time you spend asking questions and probing their circumstances, the more information you build. And as I said, I've mentioned this before, you have to peel the onion back layer by layer and get to the root cause. So in an ideal situation, and actually what I would like you all to do, not in this minute, but when you get the next opportunity working with your managers, I want you to create a pick chart. It's like problem, identification, and cause. It's just a box with 3 columns. Yeah? And really what we're going to do is we've got to capture every problem that we are aware of that your ideal client may or may not encounter that your software has a positive impact upon. Yeah? It's really important to do this because we need to frame in our mind the width and breadth of where our solution, where our offering can actually add value. Because when we know that, when we interact with the customer, we can start making mental notes as to how many pain points we know that we can impact upon. So column 1 is the problem. You know? What is the pain that we know that they have? You know? Yeah? What is the consequence, the impact of that problem on the business? And what is our best understanding of the cause of it? Once we understand that, we start to position ourselves as not salespeople, but consultants. Because what it's about is your qualification process is about engendering trust. If you don't trust someone, you're unlikely to allow them to lead you in a conversation. You're even less likely to open up and potentially be vulnerable to them. And you're probably unlikely to move forward in a sales process with them. So how do we create trust? It's empathic listening, especially if what they're telling you, or rather what is not being said, may reflect badly on them. For example, we have this current HR system, and it's not doing a great job, but you know that person is the person who ordered it or bought it. You don't want to say, haha, you made a mistake. That's not helping. So empathy and understanding how you don't want to make people feel stupid, really important. Yeah? But that trust thing comes from, am I talking to someone who is actually capable of helping me? Are you qualified to actually tell me about this stuff? And that's a subconscious thought. It's an evaluation that we all do. How do we make that determination? Well, we listen to what we're being asked. Is the quality of the conversations, the quality of the questions that you're asking commensurate with that outcome? So if intelligent questions and make observations that they go, yeah, we have that problem too. When we speak to that, that helps build the understanding that actually this person on the phone or on the call actually really does understand the problem or problems that our business may face. Because if you're, and it's easier when you verticalize, but essentially the operational function of a business, problems come into two types, yeah? You have what's called a technical problem and you have a business problem. Most commonly, you will reveal the technical problem first. Something doesn't do something the way it should. And because it doesn't do something efficiently or the way it should, the consequence is a business problem. If the database you're using doesn't disseminate enough information to the people in the organization in the correct manner, the business may need to employ somebody additionally to remedy that problem, either by manually undertaking a process or manually doing something that will allow for that information to pass. So you have a technical problem with the database. The business problem is that they have to spend more money in order to make the business function efficiently. So there is an identification of a business problem from a technical problem. Now that's a very simplistic example. It's your job to actually work out what those problems are from a technical and translate that into a business. Because if I speak to the technical problem, there won't be the same emotional connection. But if I can understand the technical problem and then resolve it to a business problem and how that business problem impacts upon the person, personally in their situation, what's their emotional state? Are they stressed out by it? It allows you to build trust. And what we want to do is we want to find out what their future would look like if this problem doesn't exist. So we ask those probing questions. If this problem didn't exist the way it is currently, where would you place your time? Where would you place your focus? What would it allow you to do that you can't currently do? It's these probing questions that we're looking for. When they get an answer, and that answer is not specific, help me understand that a little bit more. Unpack that for me so I better understand. And when they do that, we validate with the validating questions of saying, so let me get this straight. You're saying, because I want to get this right, you're saying that X, Y, Z. Okay. When we repeat things back to people, it mirrors, we use their language exactly. It reflects understanding. That accelerates their trust in the process that you're going through. Listen, I imagine a lot of you are saying, yeah, but what are the questions I need to ask, right? And I can give you the examples of probing and validating and process. Tell me how that works. And I'll give you an example of process in a second, but the fact remains there isn't a definitive list. You have to apply the questions to the person in front of you. It comes from understanding the nature of the business, the nature of the software that you're selling, because the framework is the same, but the overall wrap of the question changes from situation to situation. Process questions, by the way, when you want to get into the detail, it's not enough to say, tell me about that problem with that CRM system you have. It's, oh, well, it doesn't distribute the information correctly. Okay, but the process is, how does that actually work? Talk me through the nuts and bolts of how you overcome it. So you have someone come in, they interrogate the database, they do a manual print off, they carry it over to someone's. You want to try and understand exactly how their business is working. Now this may sound like, my God, Taryn, that's just so much more work than is required. We're selling software. The difference between you guys applying this methodology and other salespeople selling SaaS is they're just saying, yeah, do you want to buy our software? It solves a problem. And they are perceived as salespeople and they're treated as such. Maybe they don't get past the first level of engagement. Maybe they're at the mercy of the person they're dealing with in order to expedite the deal internally. What we want to do is position ourselves as experts, as consultants, because when we do that, you've got more bandwidth to say, you know what, this is, in that first discovery meeting, this is probably going in the direction where we can help. Do you agree? Yeah, okay, because we've identified these problems. it would be really, really useful, and this is how we prefer to work, to engage with a couple of other people in the business that may also be encountering a problem that the company's having, but from their perspective. So normally what happens is, oh, you don't need to bother the other people, you can just deal with me. But you can't speak to the problem they're having because they have a different view of it. So if we position ourselves as authoritative, if we position ourselves as knowledgeable and we've identified a problem, it's less of a leap to say, I need to speak to other people in your company in order to make sure I understand it from their perspective, because we're building this holistic view of the problems their company has. We want to get in the position where we know as much about their business as they do, because we're asking questions and listening. If you're doing Zoom calls, ask permission to record it. Really important. Really, 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 really important. If you're on a telephone, you must be making notes. I don't care how good a memory you have. If you're not taking, and you're probably working on multiple opportunities or multiple calls, you will not remember it. And the detail here, this detail that we capture in these early stage qualification and discovery calls are what's going to help the AE to accelerate that through the process of buying. Yeah? Because the quality, listen, if I looked at your CRM system, okay, and I looked at the notes for one of your opportunities, would I be able to determine that company from the notes that you share? Because if you think about it, whilst people have similar problems, the mechanics, the nature, the impact of that problem is going to be specific to them. No two companies are really the same. We tend to categorize them as both having problems with X. You know, the CRM isn't working, the HR software is not working. But the impact manifests differently. If you can identify the company, where's Morgan gone? There you are. If Morgan can look at the notes and say that company is that company, without looking at the name, then enough information has been communicated. So really, if you take your accounts, one of your people's accounts, and read out the notes from one of their opportunities, they should be able to identify who you're talking about without mentioning names, because the problems are so specific. If you can't do that, when you hand that over to the AE, what are you giving them? Generic information. You're not positioning them to be authoritative. We need to empower. This is a process of communication and sharing of information. You're actually in the most critical part of the sale, not the AE. Believe it or not, you are more important, because if you don't do this part right, they are climbing Mount Everest instead of walking up a hill. I'm serious. And if you do this right, when you migrate into an AE role, you will realize just how important this foundational piece is. Listen, qualification doesn't happen in 20 minutes. It really doesn't, because sometimes customers don't even have the answers formulated coherently, clearly in their mind, such that they can share that with you on the call. And this may or may not be what the management here wants to hear, but this process sometimes takes 2 or 3 calls. Yeah? Because you are slowly building trust. You're slowly delving into their situation. You can't make it as a Spanish Inquisition where it's like, tell me question, answer, 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 and they're just like, it has to be conversational. You have to open the dialogue up and make it two-way. Listening more than speaking though, yeah? Taking detailed notes, asking probing questions, get them to open up. Tell me more about how this works. Can you go into that a little bit deeper so I can understand what the impact is? Yeah? The more they are speaking about it, it means they're thinking about it. If they're thinking about it at a personal level, they're going to have an emotional attachment to that. Whether it's manifest emotion, like, well, got to deal with it, or it's like, there's a connection that this is actually uncomfortable. This is a problem that needs solving. Because if we cannot establish that gap between where they are, where they want to be, and that gap has to be sufficiently big for them to act, because what we're asking them to do is trust us to guide them through change. It's understanding what their concerns are about. What is the current situation with your incumbent system? How's that working out for you? What did you like about it? Go into that more for me. I want to understand. Obviously, beyond the obvious, like, when does the contract finish? But, a lot of the information you might need is in existing infrastructure, because we don't always have an opportunity to sell into a greenfield site. Do you know that expression, where there's no existing CRM? They're using Google Docs or spreadsheets, etc. That's the golden position, right? Because that's easier, because the gap is much bigger when you apply that technology. But when you are talking to somebody that has an incumbent system, we need to understand the gap between their experience and where they want to be. Now, there's two sides to qualification. To qualify in, this is something I can do and we can proceed with. But equally, if you do this process correctly and you realize that the gap is so small or not sufficient, that the pain isn't there, that motivates them to work with you, then you should be upfront and honest. You'll get more respect from them if you say, look, you know what? Perhaps this isn't for us. Because after listening in depth of what your situation is, we can't help. Perhaps there is someone else. I'm not saying that that's the prevalence, but there's no value in trying to sell something to somebody who doesn't really see the value. What I want you to do is say, yes, I really see that. That's a pain that needs solving, and I'm going to help you communicate that through the business. But that only comes from understanding where they are, understanding the problems. What are the impacts on that? I guess what we're trying to do is we're trying to get them to verbalize what they probably are aware of, but haven't distilled it into a singular thought.
Yeah, one question here. For example, these customers, these people that you can see that they have the problem, but maybe that their vision is not that good and they don't see that problem.
But that's a point of view saying, talk me through the process. How does this work? What would that be like if it was working more efficiently? You're the one that has to do the work. They're not always going to tell you I have a problem. And in fact, when they tell you I have a problem, you can't trust them just to have articulated the problem fully. You go, that's really interesting. What is the consequence on other parts of the business? You have to look at all the ways. Remember that I spoke about this chart where we have a clear understanding of the kinds of problems that businesses may face, the impact on those businesses, and then the root causes, if we can determine that. And we refer to that. So in that opening conversation, we often speak to companies just like you, and they've often reported these sorts of problems being manifest. Is that something that you've noticed in your company? Yeah, that's right. Would you be okay in me sharing some of our thoughts of how we've uncovered the causes of those? Because I think the impacts are typically this, and this. Have you seen that yet? I'd like to go through that with you in a bit more detail. We have to frame why they should let us ask questions. So yes, to your point, they don't have the vision, but we help them see it. We paint the picture by the questions that we ask. Yeah? That help? Más o menos, no.
So you spoke earlier about coming over as a consultant, and I've encountered like an outbound that most of the companies, they really want to know who you are.
As a person or a company?
Yeah, as a person. So you have to introduce yourself. Hello? Yeah. So you have to introduce yourself somehow, either with a company name. So if you tell them that you're an HR platform or who you really are, you already come over as a salesperson. But if you don't state what you really are, they come over as suspicious. So when do you make that transition? How do you introduce yourself?
No, listen, I'm not saying don't talk about the fact that Factorial is a company that builds solutions. But you don't have to say we're a software company. What do you do in essence? You solve the problem of how would you frame it? Personal management, operation management? What would you say? That if you didn't use the word software, what would you say the impact on the business is?
I'm not sure.
So if someone said, what does Factorial do? and you're not allowed to say software, what would you say?
A solution that helps business processes.
Right, there you go. So Factoria is a company that delivers solutions to business processes. I'm one of the guys in the sales team. Never lie about being a salesperson. There is no shame in that, and if you think there is, then you've got to work on that. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I want to have a conversation to see if there's a fit between what we do and your organization, because there are lots of companies just like you that we have worked with successfully to deliver that value as part of the outsource, the process.
I feel like by the time we're actually talking to them, they know Factorial from the gatekeeper and also from, you know, adding them on LinkedIn. So going in with that, they kind of already know who we are.
There's no problem then, is there?
I guess not.
Look, is there a problem? I know you're a salesman. Okay, fine. But why do you want to speak to me? I'm not interested in buying things. Okay, that's fine. I get that. Most companies say that as their opening position. But the reason why I'm calling you is because we work with companies like you. We often uncover massive efficiencies and ways that they can improve whatever you say that. And it's not just some kind of cheesy sales line, it's what impact you deliver to companies like them. And you're just inviting them to have a conversation to see if there's a fit. Oh yeah, but we have a system. You probably do. How is that working out for you, by the way? Is it delivering everything that you want? Because often we hear that, yeah, we have a system, but there's always gaps. And I'd love to just understand whether there is and it will only take a few minutes to find that out. Now listen, this isn't going to guarantee that everyone wants to talk to you. It's not about that, but it's about making yourself aligned with the outcome that you're trying to get. And that person who says no to you, right, call them back in a month's time, and they may have a different energy. You might have got them on the wrong day. Yeah? How many touch points? 5 or 6, 7 or even 8. People are managing all the different things in their life, whether it's job, personal, whatever. The fact that you called on that day, that you got that answer, doesn't mean that that's the death of it. It really doesn't. That's my train of thought. So, if we've got this position of we understand what problems they can be impacted by, we've been invited to a conversation, we invite them to join us in a conversation, we've asked those probing questions. You know, what does that look like? How's that working out for you? Tell me about that. Go deeper into this. We start to make a list of the problems that we think we can have an impact upon. We make a mental note, or we jot them down in all the ways that we can help. We're starting to measure this gap. Yeah? We use validation language to reflect back our understanding to help build that rapport. Yeah? We may only get, how long is your typical discovery? 20, 30 minutes? 20 max. You're going to have 2 or 3 conversations at that point. Realistically, you're not going to get that done. The first conversation is kind of sizing each other up and saying, do I want to trust you? Am I able to talk to you in a way that is not going to waste my time? You have to give them a reason to invest another 20 minutes. And that's going to be reflected on the quality of your questions and your awareness of the business that they operate, or the way that that business might be impacted by those problems, which is why it's really important that you understand the potential impacts, the problems, the impacts, and the root causes, because if you speak to that, you will get their attention. Guys, is this making sense? Call me out. If you think this is bullshit, I'm actually okay with that. Because I'm seeing people looking at me going, yeah, you haven't done this. This is not how it is. I have done this for 15, 20 years. I do know what I'm talking about, but I'm open for someone to say I don't agree. So challenge it. Tell me what aspect of what I'm saying doesn't or isn't congruent with your experience, and we'll try and unpack that.
Asking if
Because if they say no, it's an open-ended question, and they will say no. And if I call another time, they will not pick up the phone.
Yeah, you're asking permission. I mean, this comes back to cold calling, right? So the first call is not about doing 20 minutes of discovery. That first initial call is, hey, I've been trying to get hold of you for a week. Yeah. I know you're busy. I'm only going to take 2 minutes of your time, X, Y, Z. Can we schedule a call? Don't, have you got 2 minutes? They just slam the door.
Yeah, but I think if you say that it's just 2 minutes, you are simplifying the business, or you are taking, you'll not explain in 2 minutes. You don't want to have a talk for 2 minutes. You want to have
Yes, you do.
30 minutes.
No, you don't.
No?
No, you want 2 minutes in this call to book a time for 20 minutes at a later call. The first point in the process is to sell the next step. So the first cold call is to sell the 20-minute meeting. The 20-minute meeting is to sell the next 20-minute and the next, if necessary, before the demonstration. So when I say I'm only going to take 2 minutes of your time because I know you're busy and I've got to jump on a call, but I've been trying to reach you for over a week. We work with companies like you to impact upon business processes. I think that it would be a really interesting conversation between us, and I'd like to demonstrate to you how we've helped companies like you to improve efficiencies in these areas or overcome these challenges that we know commonplace in companies like you. Can we speak next week for 20 minutes?
I understand, but well, I agree with you, but I think for me it's not really working that way. I prefer to go straight to the point in the first call and discover.
Well, that's your preference then.
Yeah.
But the point is, if you don't make it formulaic and you don't do the same thing over and over again, you can't measure the results. You can't make adjustments to what you're doing. But believe me, if you try and sell 20 minutes when you've just got someone on the phone, that's a lot harder than to take them for 2 minutes and then get a meeting afterwards. Absolutely is.
The thing is that when I start the call, I don't ask if they have 2 minutes. I start making some questions, and if I see like the people is not really in time to talk with me, I will say, okay, I will call you later, no problem.
Yeah, but that's not, my view is that's not respectful. You don't know, you've just phoned me. I'm in the middle of an argument with my wife. I'm having a meltdown with my staff. And you just like, blah, 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 blah. It's like there's no respect there. It's all about you. I want to tell you. I want to talk to you. It's like, oh. It's about understanding. It's not about me. It's not about Factorial. It's about the customer. I want to help you, and I want to do that respectfully. Tell me when is a good time for us to talk. I'll only take 2 minutes of your time now, but I really would love to have 20 minutes with you on a call. That's respectful, because otherwise, put yourself in the position of the person that you've called. The phone rings, it's like, hello, yes? Salesperson. No, I'm not interested, I'm sorry. Because you don't know what point in time you're interrupting their day. So we have to be mindful of how we might be coming across the situation. So that's why I believe, my preference, you obviously keep your own counsel on this if you think you're getting better results. But if you're not happy with your results, which I don't think you are, try the other approach. Yeah? Yeah? You're happy with your results? Great stuff. Are you on target? Are you hitting target? She is? Excellent. Maybe you want to come up and teach. No, I'm only kidding. There was another question, though?
I totally agree with you, and I don't want to seem like...
No, listen, I invited her. It's fine. It's cool.
Maybe it depends also in the market we are working with, and maybe it's... I'm working for Portugal, so I really feel if I ask, can I have a talk with you right now, 2 minutes? Well, no. I just think that...
And I said exactly the same. I don't ask for 2 minutes. Listen, the semantics, the detail is you're asking permission. I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you, I'm only going to take 2 minutes of your time. I'm framing the conversation. I don't know if you're here for the first talk.
No.
Okay, no problem. The idea is, and we're going off topic a little bit, but I want to address this because it's important. The idea is that we have to give someone a reason to talk to us. When they're not giving us our money, when they're not giving us their money, the only thing they can give us is their attention and their time. So in that first engagement, we want to sell the idea that it's worth listening for 2 minutes. So we have to say something that captures their interest. It's about them, it's in their interest. to sell the next 20 minutes. If you start with can I have, it's already about you. It's not about can I have 2 minutes of your time. It's about I want to share something with you. Now is probably not a good time for either of us, but this is why I want to talk to you, and can we put 20 minutes in the diary when it is convenient? That's a different energy when you're speaking to somebody. They did record, you guys recorded the first session, right? So make that available, because that would be really helpful. But thank you for the feedback, because you guys do not believe what I say, because that's too easy. You've got to go and try it for yourself, right? You have actually got to apply stuff. If you don't try it and you don't apply it consistently, you're not going to see any different results. If you carry on doing what you're doing, and bearing in mind that you're not necessarily happy with what you're getting, you're only going to get the same results. Yeah? How are we doing for time, guys? 10 past 10. Okay.
Yeah, I have another question related to what you said of trying to get more people inside the company, because this is a global impact. That I think is great. But for me, it's quite difficult, because HR is like the last department inside the company.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of times. So I can say, okay, HR is the main department that you will receive the benefit, but there are others that this has a global impact.
Yeah.
I try to tell them as well, like finance, operations, CEO, so they must see this.
Okay.
But they just want the information, and they want to talk directly to the people, and you are losing a lot of power there.
Sure. So can you list every problem that impacts their business from an operations perspective, finance perspective? Or do you have that list? Do you have that in your head clearly? Problem, impact, cause. That's my point. If you were armed with that information, when you do speak to operations, when you speak to finance, you then say, we know that this kind of problem is prevalent in companies of your size. Are you seeing that too? We often, and with your permission, I'd like to go into how that translates to impacts that may or may not be visible. What we found is it's often caused by these kinds of outcomes or these kinds of causations. I'd love to have a conversation for 20 minutes just to go a little bit deeper. It may or may not be relevant to you, but I think there's some value, because often when we work with companies like you, that's what's come out of this. I completely understand what you're saying. There is not enough interest in them to have a conversation. They want a review. You have to give them the reason by demonstrating perspective they may not have. Yeah, because as to your point earlier, they don't have the vision. So we have to paint the picture for them. And the only way we can do that is by working out all the ways in which their business is impacted, the causes of that impact, and how we might provide a solution in what we do. Who was?
I have a question about like our own management development, because I feel like the quality of what you're describing is amazing. Like I talked to several people, I addressed the problem, everything super prepared for the call, maybe do 2 or 3 discoveries, and then the demo. I feel like this is not fitting in my schedule. Like how many companies you think you could target in 1 week doing this?
It's not for me to answer. I don't know how your operations work. How many calls can I make? How many conversations can I have? Well, how many hours do I want to work? I mean, if you're not doing it this way, it might be worth considering, but having specific days of the week where all you do is morning calling or full day calling, 2 days, 3 days, and do your meetings. I always try and book my meetings a week to 2 weeks in advance. Not the same week. A couple of reasons for that. It's better to have 5 meetings in one day, back to back, because you get into flow, you get into that rhythm of speaking and questioning, and it's good to do that. It also reflects that you're in demand and that your time. The common perception of a salesperson is you're always going to be available. I can just phone up and you're going to be available. Well, no, it's not the case. And the fact that when you reduce your availability, there creates a perception of, there's a gap. It's always about gaps. So I prefer to have a structured calling schedule and specific days of the week for meetings, if that's possible. It isn't always, and we try and accommodate our prospects as much as possible. But if you say to them, can we schedule a call for next week, then, or the end of the week, if you're at the beginning of the week, then you can then start aiming to fill that one day up. And you know, how many meetings can you do? How many 20-minute calls can you make in a day? Quite a few, right? You've probably got 20 to 30 minutes on the call, probably 20 to 30 minutes on the CRM. If you're a fast typer, maybe half of that, because you need to capture the notes and then get on with the next one. And it's better to do calling, so you get into that flow and that rhythm, and then meetings after, that rhythm of asking questions, getting into that. The more questions that you get comfortable with asking, you start to build a navigable tree. You start to show there's a pathway in through their problem into opening up the business. And when, to your point, how do I increase my understanding of the business? That HR person may or may not have a lot of power, yeah, in the grand scheme of things, but they may provide you with the introduction. They may provide you with the email address. And if you position it such that, you know, we often hear that, leave it with us. The reason we don't choose to work that way as a company is because we realize our ability to understand, identify, and potentially resolve problems comes from a holistic view of the business, because what we offer doesn't just impact HR, it's operational, and that includes everybody in the organization. You know, tell me about how operations are affected by this problem, and you will have your version of it versus theirs. So that's why we try and engage everybody. And the best way to do that is maybe just have a very short conversation with the three of us or the four of us. I don't want to waste people's time, but I think it's important that they bring to the table their perspective. And of course, that's not guaranteed to get you the response that you're looking for, but you have to try different approaches. But the quality of your questions and the way that you conduct yourself will increase your perceived value and utility. If you're just seen as someone who's just trying to sell them something, they'll treat you as such. If you're someone from a high firm management consultancy company, and you know you're paying, they're commanding really big sums for the work they do for clients, you'll probably listen to them because they come with presence and they come with a knowledge and understanding about the business. Yeah. Any more questions? Come on, there's got to be questions. Disagreements, arguments. Open questions, closed answers is what we're aiming for.
In my experience, in my short experience, it's good to start with closed questions and then make them more open, with time. So, are you Tehran? Yes. Are you a sales coach? Yes. Do you have this problem? Tell me more about it. So, from closed to more open, otherwise they see it's like too much investment if you start with an open question and it's the beginning of the conversation.
I'm not going to split hairs. I get that. The psychology is, though, when people are speaking to salespeople, there's an underlying understanding that I'm trying to get you to say yes to things. Yeah. If you go for the no, then it's easier, which is a technique we use in cold calling. But sure, if you want to start with a couple of little no questions, a couple of closed questions, the idea is, what the distinction is, when they reply to an open question, we want specificity. We want them to be precise in their answer. The more precise they are, the better understanding we get. Yeah? So by all means, use closed questions at the beginning and then graduate with open. But make a list of all the kinds of questions that you think are going to help you open up the problems. Because I don't know the problems that you're actually encountering in those businesses. I mean, what's the top 3 problems your clients are most likely having that you can solve? Come on, guys, you should know this. What's the top 3 problems? Sorry. Working off multiple systems. So that is what? That's a technical problem, right? Because it's your disparate information on different systems. How does that translate to a business problem?
They do a lot of double work.
Say again?
They do a lot of double work.
Okay, so what's the impact of more?
Losing time.
So time? What's time?
Money.
Time is money. So it's efficiency.
Maybe they make mistakes, people get angry,
What's the impact of your business on having disparate systems? How's that working out? How would that be different if you had a centralized system? What are the problems that you've seen historically? How long have you worked this way? There are so many questions that come from that one point. So that was disparate systems. What are the other two? Come on. Other two top problems. Guys.
They are doing a lot of manual processes.
Manual processes, okay. Similar problem. Technical, because they're physically doing it, translates to time, money. Our job is to understand what that really is. I mean, me saying it's time, money, that's a generic answer. The answer we want to get to is, how does that actually play out in process? What does that manual system look like? Get them to speak through the steps. What does that impact the business? Does that mean you have more staff than you need? Does it mean it takes longer for you to process a dimension of your business's work? Does that mean you're slowing your customer services down? Does it mean your salespeople aren't working efficiently? We're trying to understand those consequential impacts because that's where the business problem lies. And from the business problem, we can uncover a motivation to change. Because if that business problem is quantified, what's that costing the business on a daily, monthly, quarterly, annually basis? How long has it been going on for? You realize you've lost X thousands of euros over the last 2 years for this process. Are you interested in seeing that change? What would that mean if the business was to capitalize on that benefit? If you didn't spend 200,000 euros over the next 5 years, where would you put that money? Oh, we would put it in developing our staff. Now we're starting to build a picture of the future. Yeah, okay, if I didn't have this problem, we could readdress different aspects of the business that are currently needing attention. So we've got disparate systems, we've got manual processes. What else, guys? Say again, sorry. Internal communication. What is that a problem?
Well, I think nowadays it's important.
No, but what's the problems you solve, I'm asking? If you're saying that there's an inefficiency of the internal communication, okay, so there's inefficient internal communication, what's the impact of that?
The impact of having a better internal communication.
What's the impact of not speaking or communicating efficiently?
Losing information.
Losing information. How does that impact the business if you've lost information?
Tasks will not be done properly.
There are so many ways that question could be addressed by the other person. It could impact every dimension of their business. Losing information, poor inventory management. Poor inventory management impacts, not having enough of one product and too much of another. Losing sales because you couldn't adequately fulfill. The idea here is we need to ask these impact questions. We need to find out what those problems are. So we've got internal communication, we've got business processes, and we've got disparate systems. Are they the principles, or are there any others?
Lack of insight.
Sorry, dude, I can't hear you.
Lack of insight.
Lack of insight. So, how would you translate that? Lack of insight. That I would, in this instance, as if you were the prospect, I'd say, that's interesting. Can you unpack that for me? What does lack of insight mean to your business?
I want to know who's doing well. I want to know where the money is being spent. I just want to have a really top-down approach, or like a really top-down view of exactly what's going on without having to pull up a really laborious report on it.
So what I'm hearing you saying, correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying you don't have adequate visibility of the operations of your business because you can't scrutinize people's performance? Was that what you were saying?
And not just performance, but just everything to do with the people.
Can you go into more detail for me? Do you see what I'm doing? I'm making him become specific. This is just silliness, and he's just giving me an example, but I'm using it to show you that that isn't a helpful answer, because his interpretation of, thank you by the way, his interpretation of what he was saying is completely different to mine. I don't know what he means. And the killer in sales is to assume I think what you said. So we have to go, be specific. Can you unpack that? Go deeper. And you may do that in context to the problems you can solve, obviously, and make mental note, and don't jump in to say, yeah, we can fix that problem, because that comes later. We want to get to the full width and breadth of all the impactful problems. Yeah?
I know that all the markets like UK, France, or Germany, they are more open to changes. Like, okay, I know that I'm
Can you project? I can't, I'm sorry. And it's for the benefit of everybody else.
Hola, hola. Okay. So yeah, in Spain, I think my opinion is like the people in the chat departments are more scared about some changes. The people are used to work from the same way during the last 20 years. Okay, they are used to do the same stuff 2-3 times per week, just maybe setting the same database for 3 times in a week. When you're in that situation that you are like, okay, I know that you have a problem, I know that I can help you just improve the way that you are working right now, sometimes they say, okay, but I'm used to work like that. How do you say it right now?
I'm not trying to sell them anything at this stage. You've just said, oh, I can help you do something, right?
Yeah.
And they've gone, well, I don't need any help.
Yeah.
Because you haven't demonstrated they have a problem that needs fixing.
Yeah.
Yeah? You can see there is a dysfunction in the way that they do something. You think, we can do that, we can fix that, but you're not in a position where you are speaking from authority, or rather they see you as someone that can help them. You're just a salesperson, quote unquote. So you have to go through that process of, so you have that database process, yeah, and it does what, and you ask questions of what's the consequence of that? Mm-hmm. What's the impact? How does that interact with the rest of the business? Mm-hmm. And what happens when that happens? Mm-hmm. Work out the process, mm-hmm. Talk to them about the impact, mm-hmm. and see if you can discover there a gap between what happens and what would they do if it didn't work that way? How would it improve their day? How would it improve the running of the business? Mm-hmm. We're not talking about I can fix this, I can solve that. No, yeah? Sure. It's about them coming to the realization that there is something that needs their attention. It's not easy, guys. If this was easy, everyone would do it. What makes you different is that you're being more methodical and you're taking an approach to asking these questions to bring yourself to this outcome. Yeah? But was that?
Yeah. Like it's completely clear. Like you know that we know that we need to go deeper in that processes for sure. The problem is like they are used to work for this way, and they are happy. They don't care about if they are spending 12 or 10 hours per day doing the same stuff because they are happy. They don't see the impact right now.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Exactly. They don't see the impact right now. Our job is to show them that hidden impact and how it manifests on the business. And we do that through asking the questions. Tell me more about that. How does that impact that? What would you do if that wasn't there? The only way they're going to change their view is by showing them something different to look at. Yeah, so you have to move their awareness away from, this is how we always do it. So, I get that, and there is a comfort in that. But can we just go into that process and what that means for your business? Now, you may realize that the person you're speaking to has no interest in changing it because it's their job, which is common, right? We then can't talk to that person, can we? Because that person has got no motivation to change because that change is going to impact them negatively. So we have to then decide who we should be talking to. You're talking to the wrong person then if the person you're speaking to sees you as a massive threat. Yeah? And you cannot position the change in a positive way from what they tell you. You have to change your audience, your target, the owner of the business. And if you're talking to the owner of the business, you're not talking about software. By the way, you're not talking about software for most of this conversation. This discovery is about the customer. It's discovery about something you don't know. You know about what you do. So we don't talk about that. The talking about the software comes at the later stages. Third meeting, demonstration. We're discovering the meaningful parts of their business that will uncover the pain, the impact, and from there we then say, well, what does good look like? Where do we want to be? Right. Any more questions before we wrap this up?
Yeah, related to this, what about jumping like the person if you are talking to the HR person and you can see that it's not reacting positively to what you said because maybe they see you as a threat, but maybe if you jump into the CEO, for example, it's a bit aggressive.
It's only aggressive if you're saying, right, well, you're not helping me, I'm going to go and talk to your CEO. If you're doing it at the same time, it's like, by the way, I'm talking to the CEO as well. It's not aggressive. It's perspective, and it's how it's context. If you're having a conversation with this guy and you're not giving me the answers, and I say, well, I'm going to go and speak to the other guy, you'll be like, well, you've just gone round me. But if I say, hey, by the way, I'm already in touch with the CEO. I just wanted to let you know that we're talking to a number of people in the organization, or we're reaching out to a number of people in the organization, because we find that gives us the best 360 view. But I wanted to talk to you to get your perspective on this problem that we think you're probably having. Are you seeing things like this happening in your business? Because that's what we see in our clients' businesses already. And if you're interested, I'll share with you that dimension of what causes it. And I want to get the CEO's perspective because he has a different view to you. It's not about being, I'm not going to talk to you anymore because you're not helping me. It's all at the same time. We make different inroads to the business. That's the difference. You can't rely on one entry point into a company. You've got to try as many as possible. But they have to be relevant, right? They've got to have some skin in the game. They've got to feel some of the pain that you're solving. But do you think you're selling the HR side of this platform more strongly than the operations, or do you think it's equal when people buy it? Which is what?
HR.
It's predominantly HR, 80%? Okay. So you need to translate how the HR efficiency across the business translates to an operational advantage for a CEO to understand. Because if you can't do that, he's not going to talk to you, or she's not going to talk to you, because she's not interested. It's HR, deal with them. But if you're talking about the ways in which this problem manifests in companies, that these hidden consequences amount to X, Y, Z, euros, energy, time, manpower, that will get their attention. And that's why you have to do this work first. You need to know the impacts. You need to know how your business impacts positively. You need to know the causes of the problems that most commonly occur in your client organizations. You need to speak to that. And then you need to tailor those questions to the audience. So the questions you ask HR wouldn't be the questions you ask operations or finance. You've got to put yourself in their position and hear what they were hearing, and how would that work? Okay, well, I think there's a lot of stunned faces in the room. I don't think there's a lot of buy-in, actually, and I think that, to be honest, 1 hour is not a sufficient amount of time to go into the detail of this process. Yeah? If an hour is sufficient, then we'd all do 1 hour courses and then we'll be superstars. But the principles I'm trying to convey to you are this. The more accurately and comprehensively you engage with your client in the discovery by asking questions to understand where they are, you will uncover better information that will allow you to progress the sale. It stands to reason. More importantly, your competitors are probably not working this way. You're going to stand out. Please reach out. If you have any specific questions, reach out on LinkedIn or however. I hope you found some value in this chat. I don't expect everybody to believe me. I think the real truth of the matter is to try it yourself, but try it meaningfully, not trying so I can prove him wrong. See if it works. Yeah? And if it doesn't, we then adjust. Yeah? There is no one explicit answer for this. Yeah? Thank you. You have a question. Sorry.
We just, I'm just 1 week old here in the company.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working with Selena on a competitor slide deck, and I mean, listen to you, and these kind of tools are part of being different from the competition.
Sure.
Because if we don't do this kind of questions
Mm-hmm.
and this kind of engagement, we easily can go to compare us with price, with technical
Becomes
options.
commodity.
Exactly, and we will be a commodity. So, I mean, we need to be
Consultants.
adapt our speech, our way to listen the client, and probably that will help us to make a trust relationship with them. And perhaps maybe there's an option that could be even less cheaper than us, but if you listen, if these guys show you as a good consultant and a good advisor, they will go with you. So, I mean, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for the comments.